Okay, so today we're going to tackle a promise you hear all the time, right? The idea that the green economy can just slot right in and replace the old one. We're going to go way beyond the usual talking points and look at what it really takes to turn a town built on coal into a city powered by the sun. So let's start by getting a handle on what's truly at stake for these communities.
I mean, this says it all, doesn't it? This isn't just about a job. We're talking about an entire identity. In these towns, the local mine or the power plant, it wasn't just the economic engine. It was the social fabric. I mean, it sponsored the Little League teams, it shaped the whole rhythm of daily life. It gave this sense of stability that was passed down from generation to generation. So when that engine finally goes quiet, what's left?
And yeah, that's the core question we're digging into. Can a coal town really become a solar city? Or is that just a nice-sounding political slogan that kind of papers over a much, much more complicated reality on the ground? Well, in this explainer, we're going to unpack the numbers, look at some real-world case studies, and get into the hard truths behind that promise. All right, section 1, the great job swap. So at first glance, the math seems really simple, right? Old energy jobs are on the way out, new energy jobs are booming. On paper, it looks like a pretty straightforward exchange. But let's actually look at the numbers. So on the one hand, you have this number, minus 500,000. Globally, the coal industry is projected to lose almost 500,000 mining jobs by 2035. I mean, think about that for a second. That's like losing about 100 coal jobs every single day for over a decade. The scale of this decline is just massive, and it's speeding up. But then you've got the other side of the coin, a huge positive number. The renewable energy sector added 2.5 million jobs in just 1 year. It jumped to 16.2 million globally in 2023. That's the biggest single-year increase they've ever seen. So there's no question, the new jobs are absolutely being created. Okay, so that's the global picture. But let's zoom in a bit, because in the US, this gap is even more stark. When you focus on just one country, you really start to see the contrast, and the challenge comes into much sharper focus. And wow, this chart just lays it all out, doesn't it? In the US today, you've got about 40,000 people working in coal mining, okay, and in the solar industry, about 280,000. That is 7 times more people working in solar than in coal mining. 7 times. So on paper, the transition looks simple, but here's the thing. The reality is way more complex. We clearly have more than enough new jobs being created to make up for the old ones. The problem is, they're not the same jobs. They're not in the same places, and they don't always go to the same people. And that is where the simple math just completely falls apart. Okay, section 2, a tale of two paychecks. Let's dig into the first big problem here, because a job isn't just a job. It's not just about the number of jobs, it's about the kind of jobs. A new job doesn't automatically replace everything that was lost with the old one. So let's look at a typical career path in each industry. On one side, you've got a unionized coal miner. We're talking a stable, lifelong career with a median wage around $67,000 a year. On the other side, you have a solar installer. The pay's generally lower, clustering around 48 to 60 grand. And here's the key. A lot of these roles are temporary construction jobs. They're not necessarily career-length positions. And that quote really nails it. That's not a one-to-one swap in income, security, or status. It's just not. You're often trading a stable, higher-paying, union-protected career for a job with less security and a smaller paycheck. And that, obviously, has a huge impact on a family's bottom line. And this impact goes way beyond just the individual paychecks. It literally hits the entire community's foundation. In a lot of these towns, a single mine or power plant can make up 20, 30, sometimes even 50% of the entire local tax base. So when that revenue just vanishes, well, that means less money for schools, for roads, for hospitals. It basically hollows out the entire community from the inside. Just look at Spain's old mining regions for a real-world example. As the mines there closed down, some towns saw their populations drop by up to 40%. I mean, can you imagine that? Almost half of your neighbors just gone in a single generation. That's what it looks like when an industry collapses without a real replacement plan in place. Okay, so is that collapse the only option? Let's look at some blueprints from the real world, specifically some lessons from Europe. We're going to see what works and what really doesn't when you're trying to manage this kind of massive economic shift. And really, Germany's Ruhr Valley is pretty much the gold standard for how to do this right. They saw the writing on the wall and started planning this transition way back in the 1960s. They didn't wait for the crisis to hit. We're talking about a 60-year plan, with billions of euros invested to deliberately transform their coal and steel heartland into a totally diversified economy built on tech, services, and culture. And this table really lays out the two different paths you can take. You've got Germany, which played the long game. It was a proactive strategy, investing in new industries, retraining workers, managing the decline over decades. Then you've got Spain, which was mostly reactive. Their policies were basically damage control, kicking in after the industry had already collapsed. Two totally different approaches. And this is maybe the single biggest lesson here. If you are waiting until the last mine announces its closure, you're already too late. A successful transition is not something you can just slap together at the last minute. It has to be a deliberate, long-term strategy that starts decades before that final whistle blows. All right, Section 4, Rewriting the Ghost Town Story. So with all that in mind, how do we build a better path forward? How do we avoid that ghost town story and actually build new, resilient economies in these places? Well, one of the most promising ideas is also one of the most direct. You just build the new solar farms right on top of the old coal mine sites. And when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. The land is already cleared, it's usually right next to the existing power grid, and most importantly, it puts that new investment directly into the communities that need it the most.
And the potential here is absolutely staggering. I mean, look at this. One analysis found that just converting a fraction of closed and closing coal mines around the world could generate almost 300 gigawatts of solar power. That's enough to power a whole country the size of Germany. And, even more important, it could create over 500,000 jobs, which is more than enough to offset all those projected job losses we talked about earlier.
And this really gets to the heart of it. The clean energy world doesn't have a shortage of jobs or projects. What it's lacking is deliberate, place-based planning. It's about being intentional. It's about connecting that new solar farm to that specific closed mine, and then connecting that community's workforce to those new jobs with real, targeted training. That's the missing piece.
So what does that playbook actually look like? Well, the steps are becoming pretty clear. Number 1, you have to start early. We're talking decades early. 2, focus on rebuilding the local tax base. Don't just get obsessed with counting job numbers. 3, provide real, tangible support. Things like paid retraining programs or wage insurance. And finally, number 4, use a targeted, place-based strategy. Prioritize putting these new projects in the fossil fuel communities that are most at risk.
And at the end of the day, this is what it all comes down to. We know how to build solar panels. The technology part of this transition, it's pretty much solved. The real question, the much harder question, is this. How do we build solar economies? It's not about swapping out one energy source for another. It's about deliberately building new, durable, and fair local economies that can actually thrive for decades to come. That is the real work ahead of us.